From translation, NIV, New International Version. This 255 day of the year. Today we are reading passages Ezekiel 40 through 42. Ezekiel chapter 40, verses 1 to 49. In the 25th year of our exile, at the beginning of the year, on the 10th of the month, in the 14th year after the fall of the city, on that very day the hand of the Lord was on me, and he took me there. In visions of God he took me to the land of Israel and set me on a very high mountain, on whose south side I saw a building that looked like a city. He took me there, and I saw a man whose appearance was like bronze. He was standing in the gateway with a linen cord and a measuring rod in his hand. The man said to me, "Son of man, look carefully and listen closely, and pay attention to everything I am going to show you, for that is why you have been brought here. Tell the Israelites everything you see. I see a wall completely surrounding the temple area." The man was holding a measuring rod 6 long cubits thick, each cubit being a cubit and a handbreadth. He measured the wall, which was 1 rod thick and 1 rod high. Then he went to the gateway facing east, and he went up its steps. The portico of the gateway was the first part of that gateway, and its inner threshold was at the other end of the passageway. The alcoves, the guardrooms, for the gatekeepers measured 6 cubits by 6 cubits. The distance between the alcoves was 5 cubits. The threshold of the gate by the portico on the near side was 1 rod wide. Then he measured the portico of the gateway. It was 8 cubits, and its jambs were 2 cubits thick. The portico of the gate was at the end nearest the inner passageway. The guardrooms of the east gateway were 3 on either side. They had the same measurements, and the faces of the projecting walls on either side had the same measurements. Then he measured the width of the entrance of the gateway. It was 10 cubits. The length of the gateway was 13 cubits. In front of each guardroom was a parapet 1 cubit wide and 1 cubit deep. The guardrooms themselves were 6 cubits square. Then he measured the gateway from the back wall of one guardroom to the back wall of the other. It was 25 cubits wide, from one opening to the other. He measured along the faces of the projecting walls all around the inside of the gateway, 60 cubits. The distance from the entrance of the gateway to the far end of the portico on the entrance was 50 cubits. There were narrow windows to the guardrooms and to their pillars inside the gateway all around, and in the same way there were windows to the archway. The windows ran round inward facing the pavement, with windows all around. Then he brought me into the outer court. There I saw some rooms and a pavement that had been constructed all around. There were 30 rooms along the pavement. The pavement was laid at the side next to the outer walls, and it ran around the court, so that the distance from it to the inner court was 100 cubits square. He measured the distance from the front of the lower gate to the front of the inner court. It was 100 cubits on the east side as well as on the north. Then he measured the length and width of the gate leading from the outer court to the inner court, which faced north. Its alcoves, the 3 on either side, its projecting walls, and its portico had the same measurements as those of the first gateway. It was 50 cubits long and 25 cubits wide. Its windows, its portico, and its palm tree decorations had the same measurements as those of the gate facing east. 7 steps led up to it, and its portico was opposite the inner court. In the inner court there was a gate to the north. It was the same as the gate on the east. He measured its jambs and its portico with measuring rods. The gateway and its portico had narrow windows all around, like the windows of the others. It was 50 cubits long and 25 cubits wide. 7 steps led up to it, and its portico was opposite the inner court. There were palm tree decorations on its jambs, 1 on either side. The inner court also had a gate facing south, and he measured from this gate to the gate on the south. It was 100 cubits. Then he brought me into the inner court through the south gate, and he measured the south gate. It had the same measurements as the others. Its alcoves, its projecting walls, and its portico had the same measurements as those of the others. The gateway and its portico had windows all around. It was 50 cubits long and 25 cubits wide. The porticos of the gates surrounding the inner court were narrow and had palm tree decorations on each jamb. 8 steps led up to each gateway. Its portico faced the outer court. Palm trees decorated its jambs, and 8 steps led up to it. Then he brought me to the inner court on the east side, and he measured the gateway. It had the same measurements as the others. Its alcoves, its projecting walls, and its portico had the same measurements as those of the others. The gateway and its portico had windows all around. It was 50 cubits long and 25 cubits wide. Its portico faced the outer court. There were palm trees on its jambs, 1 on either side, and 8 steps led up to it. Then he brought me to the north gate, and he measured it. It had the same measurements as the others. Its alcoves, its projecting walls, and its portico had the same measurements as those of the others. It had narrow windows all around. It was 50 cubits long and 25 cubits wide. Its portico faced the outer court. Palm trees decorated its jambs, 1 on either side, and 8 steps led up to it. A room with a doorway was by the portico in each of the inner gateways, where the burnt offerings were washed. In the portico of the gateway were 2 tables on either side, on which the burnt offerings, sin offerings, and guilt offerings were slaughtered. By the side of the gate, nearer the inner court, were 2 tables on which the offerings were slaughtered. So there were tables inside the gateway for the slaughter of the burnt offerings, sin offerings, and guilt offerings. Near these tables there were 4 other tables, flat on top, made of stone. They were used for preparing the burnt offerings and other sacrifices, and were 1/2 cubits long, 1/2 cubits wide, and 1 cubit high. There were hooks, 3 inches long, fastened to the walls of all the rooms, and where the offerings were placed. He said to me, "These are the tables where the priests will prepare the sacrifices. That is, the burnt offerings and the sin offerings. They are where they will prepare other offerings without having to bring them out into the outer court." Then he brought me into the inner court on the north side and led me to the room facing the temple. It was about 100 cubits away. The room faced north was for the priests who officiated in the service of the altar. These were the Zadokites, the only Levites who may come near the Lord to minister to him. Then he measured the courtyard. It was square, 500 rods long and 500 rods wide. And there was an altar in the front of the temple. Then he brought me to the portico of the temple and measured its jambs. They were 5 cubits on either side. The width of the gate was 14 cubits. Its side walls were 3 cubits on either side. The portico was 20 cubits wide and 12 cubits deep. It was reached by a flight of stairs, and there were pillars by each of its jambs, 1 on either side. Ezekiel chapter 41, verses 1 to 26. The man brought me to the main hall and measured the jambs. Each was 6 cubits wide, and the width of each side wall was 7 cubits. The entrance was 12 cubits wide, and the side walls flanking it were 6 cubits wide on either side. Then he measured the length of the inner room of the temple. It was 20 cubits long and 20 cubits wide. He said to me, "This is the most holy place." He measured a distance of 20 cubits from one end of the room to the other. And he said to me, "This is the holy place. It is pure." Then he measured the wall of the temple. It was 6 cubits thick, and each side room was 4 cubits wide all around the temple. The side rooms were on 3 levels, one above another, and 30 rooms in each level. There were ledges all around the wall to serve as supports for the rooms, so that the supports did not extend into the wall of the temple. The side rooms all around the temple became wider with each successive level, and the structure rose level by level around the house, so that the width of the structure increased as one went up, from the lowest to the highest level through the middle. I saw that the temple had a raised base all around it, forming the foundation of the side rooms. It was the length of a full rod, 6 long cubits. The outer wall of the side rooms was 5 cubits thick. The open space between the side rooms of the temple and the rooms over the courtyard measured 20 cubits on each side. The boundary around the temple had the same measurements. The doors of the side rooms opened onto the open space, one door toward the north and another door toward the south, and the open space was 5 cubits wide all around. The building that faced the courtyard on the west side was 70 cubits wide and 90 cubits long. It had a wall of 5 cubits thick all around, and its entrance was toward the east. He measured the temple. It was 100 cubits long, and the courtyard and the building and its walls had the same length. The width of the temple and the courtyard on the east side was 100 cubits. Then he measured the length of the building facing the courtyard at the rear of the temple, including its porches on each side. It was 100 cubits. The main hall of the temple and the outer sanctuary and their respective porches faced the same direction. The inner sanctuary and the portico had a coating of cedar, and so were the sides of the temple and the window frames. It had carved cherubim and palm trees on them, with a carved cherub on each panel, alternating with a palm tree, and there was a carved cherub on each side of the door. The floor, the threshold, and the window frames had a carving of cherubim and palm trees, like the carvings on the 2 doors of the inner sanctuary. On the walls all around, inside and outside, from the floor up to the windows were covered. The wall was decorated with carved images of cherubim and palm trees. Between every 2 cherubim, there were palm trees, and every cherub had 2 faces. There was an altar made of wood, 3 cubits high, 2 cubits long, and 2 cubits wide. It had corners, and its base and sides were made of wood. He said to me, "This is the table that is before the Lord." The outer court had gates facing the north, and he brought me to one of them. He measured the gateways and the porches on either side, which had 3 gateways on one side and 3 on the other. Its piers, its porches, and its palm trees had the same measurements as those of the first gateway. The gate was 7 cubits wide, and its porch was 3.5 cubits wide. There were windows all along the way through which could be seen. The gate was 7 cubits wide, and its porch was 3.5 cubits wide. 7 steps led up to it, and its porches were opposite them. It had palm trees on its piers, one on either side. Ezekiel chapter 42, verses 1 to 20. The man brought me out by the north gate and led me around to the outer court. Then he brought me to the group of chambers opposite the temple court and on the north side of the area in front of the temple itself. The building's facade was like that of the others. It was 500 rods long and 250 rods wide. Opposite the 20 cubits wide that belonged to the inner court, and opposite the pavement that belonged to the outer court, gallery faced gallery on all 3 stories.